Representative Felix.
Here.
Representative Hall.
Present.
Representative Kennedy.
Present.
Representative Knight.
Here.
Representative McGaw.
Here.
Representative Nardone.
Present.
Representative Newberry.
Here.
Representative Shawcross Smith.
Present.
Representative Tansey.
Present.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Welcome to the House Committee on State Government and Elections. Today is Monday, April 26, 2021. We have 8 bills on today's calendar. 3 of them are scheduled for consideration and a vote, and 5 of them are scheduled for hearing and consideration. The first bill up is House Bill 5943 from Chairman Corvacey. Is there a motion for passage? Moved by Second Vice Chair Corvacey. Is there a second? Second by Representative Agello and Representative Hull. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chairman Shanley.
Yes.
First Vice Chair Messier.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Corvacey.
Yes.
Representative Ackerman.
Yes.
Representative Agello.
Yes.
Representative Baginski.
Yes.
Representative Felix.
Yes.
Representative Hall.
Yes.
Representative Kennedy.
Yes.
Representative Knight.
Yes.
Representative McGaw.
Yes.
Representative Nardone.
Yes.
Representative Newberry.
Yes.
Representative Shawcross Smith.
Yes.
Representative Tansey.
Yes.
The ayes have it.
Thank you. The next bill scheduled for consideration is House Bill 5999 from Chairwoman Vella Wilkinson. I've had conversations with a number of people on the committee and in the House about this bill, and the Board of Elections is doing a little bit more work on it to try and address those concerns. So I'm going to make a motion to hold this bill for further study at this time. Can I get a second? Second from Representative McGaw. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Chairman Shanley.
Yes?
First Vice Chair Messier.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Corvacey.
Yes.
Representative Ackerman.
Yes.
Representative Agello.
Yes.
Representative Baginski.
Yes.
Representative Felix.
Yes.
Representative Hall.
Yes.
Representative Kennedy.
Yes.
Representative Knight.
Yes.
Representative McGaw.
Yes.
Representative Nardone.
Yes.
Representative Newberry.
Yes, they
Representative-
seconded as well.
Representative Shawcross Smith. Can you put your mic on? Representative Shawcross Smith.
Yes.
Representative Tansey.
Yes.
The ayes have it.
Thank you. Third bill on our calendar comes to us from Representative Felix. It's House Bill 6095. It would remove all references to and Providence plantations in statutes relating to the judiciary in accordance with the constitutional amendment passed by the state last fall. Is there a motion for passage?
So moved.
Moved by Representative Agello. Is there a second? Second
Yes.
by Representative
Teresa.
McGaw. And somebody on WebEx as well.
Teresa Tansey.
Representative Tansey. Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chairman Shanley.
Yes.
First Vice Chair Messier.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Corvacey.
Yes.
Representative Ackerman.
Yes.
Representative Agello.
Yes.
Representative Baginski.
Yes.
Representative Felix.
Yes. Am I supposed to abstain?
No.
Oh, gotcha. Then yes.
Representative Hall.
Yes.
Representative Kennedy.
Yes.
Representative Knight.
Yes.
Representative McGaw.
Yes.
Representative Nardone.
Yes.
Representative Newberry.
Yes.
Representative Shawcross Smith.
Yes.
And Representative Tansey.
Yes.
The ayes have it.
Thank you. The remaining 5 bills on our calendar are just scheduled for consideration. It's House Bill 6240, 6241, 6252, 6253, and 6254. Is there a motion to hold all 5 of those bills for further study?
I'll make a motion.
Moved by Second Vice Chair Corvacey, second by First Vice Chair Messier. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote on holding those 5 bills for further study?
Chairman Shanley.
Yes.
First Vice Chair Messier.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Corvacey.
Yes.
Representative Ackerman.
Yes.
Representative Agello.
Yes.
Representative Baginski.
Yes.
Representative Felix.
Yes.
Representative Hull. Representative Hull.
Yes.
Representative Kennedy.
Yes.
Representative Knight.
Yes.
Representative McGaw.
Yes.
Representative Nardone.
Yep.
Representative Newberry.
Yes.
Representative Shawcross-Smith.
Yes.
Representative Tansey.
Yes.
The ayes have it.
The first bill we're going to consider tonight is House Bill 6254 from Representative Casimiro. It's an act relating to state affairs and government standards of conduct for notaries public. It would codify into general laws the standards of conduct for notaries public in the state of Rhode Island by the Secretary of State, which came into effect on April 3rd, 2020. The law would take effect on July 1st of 2021 and sunset and expire on July 1st of 2023. I believe that Representative Casimiro is available via WebEx to testify on her legislation.
I am. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for that introduction. You just kind of stole all my words, but thank you for the introduction. I wanted to let everyone know that this is just codifying an executive order from the Secretary of State. However, we are taking it one step further. We did add in this legislation that it includes conducting business via video conferencing. We are trying to avoid any litigation in the future because the current executive order does not include video conferencing. So we're just looking to do that. So there are no deeds or conveyances that get overturned just because it wasn't written into law. The ACLU did submit an amendment today. I am totally fine with it. It just, it changes a little bit of the wording. It does not change the intent of this piece of legislation. I do have one expert witness that will be on the line, Eric Alaros, who brought this to my attention. But basically, it's codifying an executive order from April 3rd of 2020, extending it until July 1st of 2023, and adding more of an explanation about video conferencing so that we can avoid litigation going forward. So that's it.
Representative, why is there a sunset provision in this?
Well, we didn't want to get too greedy. We were kind of looking at it from the perspective of a pandemic, and that we're hoping that, this won't have to stay in place forever because this was put in place because of the pandemic. I mean, if we have to revisit it in July of 2023, I guess we can do that. But I'm open to suggestions on, whether or not we even have to have a sunset clause. I just trying to get for the next 2 years until we get through this so that we don't have problems going forward.
Thank you. Any other questions for Representative Casimiro? Chairman Corvacey.
I got one.
Representative Casimiro, the amendment that the ACLU suggested, has that already been included in the language that's before us, or is that on under a separate cover?
That is not included in the language right now. You should have received a letter today from Stephen Brown. It just includes the description of people that are in groups of people that are included in this. I think the bill includes just one group of people, but they're looking to expand it so it includes all classifications of people.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Knight.
Thank you, Chair. Rep. Casimiro, I'm just curious, why is this a whole brand new law? I mean, most of this stuff is already in our notary law. Why are we
So,
changing, adding in the whole section?
It came through as an executive order. This is just looking to codify that.
Well, I hear you, but it seeks to create Title 42, Chapter 30.2, but right now, Chapter 42-30.1 is a uniform law in notarial acts, and we put that into play in 2018. So, I mean, I appreciate that the Secretary just, took the 30.1, made the changes she had to make, and created the executive order. But are we intending to create a whole?
I'm not an attorney, so I would probably have to defer that to Eric Alaros, who is my expert witness.
Okay.
Any further questions for Representative Casimiro? Seeing none, the first witness we have signed up is Eric Alaros. Good afternoon, Ms. Alaros. How are you?
Oh, good. How are you? Good afternoon.
Good. We're here discussing Representative Casimiro's legislation, House Bill 6254, and you are signed up in support. You have the floor. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Alaros. I'm an attorney. I do estate planning. I've been practicing since 2009. I am a resident of Cranston. I was born in Cranston. I went to school in Boston, and I've been licensed in Mass and Rhode Island. So the reason why I'm supporting this bill is because basically we've had, as attorneys, we've had a really difficult time giving legal services to people who are in nurse. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, continue.
Okay, sorry. Okay. During the pandemic, we've had a very difficult time getting in to see clients who are in nursing homes, hospitals, assisted living facilities, just in general, even at their home. We've had to have people sign wills in their car where we're witnessing outside the window. I've been witnessing wills on people's deck, seeing through the, witnessing through the sliding glass door. Facilities just outright refuse us access as visitors. We're not given special access because we're legal counsel. All these visitor bans have just prevented us from being able to get in, and people who want to sign a will and a power of attorney, it just prevents them from having access to legal services. So I did some research, and I found that, in England, they had amended the Wills Act to allow physical presence of witnesses to include over video conferencing for the period of the pandemic for 2020 and 2021. So I support that, and allowing physical presence of witnesses to include over video conferencing would really be safer, and also we would have a taped video of the will signing, so it's better evidence of a will signing than we have now. So there's really no negative to allowing it. I think it would actually be safer and provide more evidence in the future if there was ever a question regarding a will. So that's my testimony. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Are there any questions for the witness from members of the committee? No questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too. The next bill we're going to move to is House Bill 6241. It's similar legislation introduced by Representative Stephen Lima, and the Secretary of State Corvacey is available via WebEx to introduce the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Shanley, and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak with you tonight regarding remote online notarization. And a special thanks to Representative Stephen Lima for introducing this bill on behalf of my office. Last year, my office worked with Governor Raimondo the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, and the Rhode Island Bar Association, among others, to enable remote online notarization on a temporary basis via updates to the existing executive order with regard to the conduct of notaries public. Now, as you may know, and was probably just discussed, remote online notarization is the process by which documents are notarized using secure audio-video technology while the signer and the notary are not physically in each other's presence. It was something that other states have had implemented before, and when I introduced the modernization of the notary public law, it was still only a few states that had it, and the pandemic just changed everything for us. Many important events in our lives require a notarized document. Some common documents requiring notarization include advanced medical directives, real estate transactions, lending applications, and even some professional licenses. So last year, as COVID-19 began to place limitations on the ability to conduct many transactions in person, my office heard directly from Rhode Islanders, from their attorneys, bankers, realtors, that they needed to be able to notarize documents in a safe and secure way. And so, and I have to say, this is the fastest project we've ever managed to pull off. In a matter of weeks, we implemented a process that allowed for residents and notaries to handle critically important business while adhering to CDC social distancing guidelines during the pandemic. As it stands now, once the state of emergency goes away, so will the ability to perform notarizations remotely. So now that everybody's gotten used to this and feels it's an option, and it means that a popular and sometimes really necessary service that has been enabled and worked well now for more than a year will no longer be available to residents once the executive order goes away. So in addition, notaries who have invested in the technology to provide secure remote notarizations will no longer be able to use it because there is an expense, to provide the software and access to the systems. So these notaries who have invested in this technology will no longer be able to use it, and even though many of them have been providing the service for more than a year. As Secretary of State, my goal is to make sure the government works for everyone. And making remote online notarization permanent is an important step in that mission and is something that really people want. Not only is it a critical service that is necessary during the pandemic, it's also a critical service that would serve elderly and disabled Rhode Islanders year-round. So, in fact, one of the very first remote online notarization requests we received a little more than a year ago was from the Rhode Island chapter of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. The organization emphasized the need to accommodate notarizations for older persons and those with disabilities. So, to give you a sense of how this has been absorbed, currently we have 21,066 commissioned notaries, with 124 of those have invested in the technology to serve the public as remote notaries. Lastly, 31 states have laws on the books that allow for remote notarization. So this has now become a much more common option in terms of notarization. And so as you would expect, the number of states allowing for remote notarization has increased to 48 states during the pandemic. So there's 17 states, including us, that have allowed this temporarily via executive order, but that's dwarfed by the 31 that already have laws on the books. This bill includes additional elements of the Uniform Law Commission's Model Act on notarial practices that are currently available in the standards of conduct for notaries. So it's not something that we just sort of taken up from thin air. We've gone to the Uniform Law Commission's Model Act. And I believe it's really important that we codify these long-standing practices in statute as well. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity to testify on such an important issue. And I ask for your support of House Bill 6241 that will allow remote online notarizations moving forward. This service has really proven to be beneficial for Rhode Island's notaries and citizens who need these services now more than ever. Thank you.
Any questions from members of the committee for the Secretary? Representative Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Secretary, hi. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I'm totally on board with the idea here. I mean, I think it's high time that we make this change. I just have one question. At the top of the bill, there's some deletions in there that have to do with justice of the peace stuff, and I'm trying to make the connection between electronic notary and justice of the peace. What's that about?
Can I have Maureen Ewing from my office, who I know is here on the WebEx as well, answer to that? I have a sense of why it is, but I want to make sure that I answer your question technically correctly. So, Maureen?
Thank you.
Good evening, Representative Knight. The reason why we're addressing justice of the peace at the beginning of the bill is just a piece of cleanup that we're doing. Justice of the peace, we're given the authority to potentially apply to our office as non-residents of the state, and we just want to correct that in this piece of legislation while we're codifying remote online notarization.
It's a twofer.
It's a twofer. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. And for those in the committee who may or may not know, Maureen Ewing is our Director of the Business Services Division.
Are there any other questions for the Secretary from members of the committee? I just had a quick question, Madam Secretary. There's a requirement that you download some additional software, and I'm not sure of the cost of that software, but built into this statute is a limitation on the amount that a notary can charge per document, which is $5. And if they have to download software, depending on the cost of software, we might want to look at adjusting that price so that notaries aren't losing money by providing the service.
Yes, and I'll have Maureen. I know we've had discussions internally about that as well. Maureen?
We have, and we are taking that into consideration. We're also welcoming any comments that anyone has. We've polled some of the notaries that are currently using remote online notarization, and we've gotten some feedback from them. We know it is an expense for most. We're finding independent notaries that are doing this outside of their job requirements. They may be associated with a mortgage company or other types of industry-related positions, that the fee is reasonable at this moment.
Maureen, can you answer the chairman's question about roughly how much these software programs cost?
They vary depending on what solution you're choosing. Some of them do have yearly subscriptions that cost anywhere from $100 plus a year to maintain, and others have a fee per transaction. And again, those run the gamut from $2 to $10 per transaction. There's many different solutions out there. We have 8 vendors that are currently qualified here, and they all have slightly different pricing structures.
Thank you for that answer. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? All right, thank you very much, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bye.
Next witness we have is David Salvatore. Good afternoon, David. We're here discussing House Bill 6241, and you have the floor. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is David Salvatore. I am the Government Affairs Director for the Rhode Island Association of Realtors. First, allow me to begin by thanking Secretary Corvacey for working with our members during the last few years on this initiative, and for her steady hand, not only during the pandemic, but throughout her tenure as Secretary of State. She has certainly made business operations in Rhode Island much easier for various industries, and we thank her for her leadership. We also want to thank Representatives Lima and Casey for leading on this effort in the House as well. As all of you know, the uncertain circumstances that arose from COVID-19 required public officials to rethink secure policies that promote public safety while protecting Rhode Island's economy. And as you can see in my written testimony, I emphasize the fact that real estate accounts for almost 20% of Rhode Island's gross state product. And I mentioned that at many of my hearings before the House committees because it is important to note that Rhode Island historically has lagged behind some of our neighboring states and other states across the country when looking at streamlined business operations. So we think that not only during a pandemic, but on a permanent basis, remote online notarization makes sense for the full business community, but especially real estate in Rhode Island. Remote online notarization is one of those tools that not only modernizes real estate transactions, but also allows for increased flexibility when it comes to closings. And we know that when implemented with appropriate safeguards to protect the privacy and security of consumers, online notarization results in more accessible, streamlined, and verifiable ways to conduct critical transactions which require notarization. If we've learned anything through this pandemic, Mr. Chairman, we know that providing the business community with these proactive tools is certainly one way to protect our economy during a time of crisis and uncertainty. And the Secretary pointed out that there are 31 states that have moved in this direction. And, Raia fears that we are going to once again lag behind in terms of modernizing a technology that is readily available and cost-effective to the business community. We recognize that additional work needs to be done to provide real estate brokerages and mortgage systems the support that they need to conduct home sales in a modernized way. So as you are probably aware, online home listings and showings during the pandemic have certainly changed the way homes are sold in Rhode Island. And we've heard from many of our members and their clients that they are looking for this new way of conducting real estate closings as an option. We know that there are going to be times when the in-person event and signing has to take place. But again, from a proactive perspective, many clients have reached out to realtors expressing their full support for this option on a permanent basis moving forward. So, Mr. Chairman, we're happy to provide resources to the Secretary, to this committee, in terms of data that would support full support for the bill before you. We're pleased that serious consideration took place during the pandemic and is now being considered by the General Assembly. So we urge all of you to support this bill through a positive recommendation to the full House of Representatives. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Salvatore from members of the committee? No questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next witness we have signed up is Thomas Hemmendinger. Hi, Thomas. We're here discussing House Bill 6241 from Representative Lima, and you have the floor to testify. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I submitted some written testimony, which I think may have been circulated already. But for my oral testimony, I really can't say it any better than Secretary of State Corvacey did in explaining the advantages of this bill. So if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. But I think she made all the right points and all the advantages of the bill.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hemmendinger? Can't question that. Thanks again for calling in. Next witness we have is Rory Whalen. Good afternoon, Rory. We're here discussing House Bill 6241, and you have the floor to testify. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. My name is Rory Whalen. I am the Regional Vice President of the National Association of Mutual Insurance Companies, the largest property and casualty insurance trade group with more than 1,400 members. I am speaking in strong support of this legislation, and I want to thank the sponsor and the Secretary of State for her articulate and spot-on reasoning for the bill. Specifically, the bill's provision for remote notarization is a welcome and long overdue modernization modification that will benefit Rhode Island consumers. To date, as was noted, 31 states have adopted some form of remote notarization, and legislation is currently pending in most, if not all, of the other states. Simply put, enactment of this legislation will provide a consumer-friendly and cost-effective alternative to traditional in-person notarization. This bill wisely provides a safe, secure framework that will allow important transactions to be expedited, and this includes a number of insurance-related matters. During this ongoing COVID-19 crisis, virtually every aspect of our daily lives requires that we rely on remote technology, including in education, healthcare, and general commerce. While there are many lessons to be learned from this pandemic, one is very clear today, and that is we have both the necessity and the technology that warrants implementing a permanent remote notarization process. I thank the chair and the committee for this opportunity, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Whalen? No questions. Thank you very much for your testimony. That will conclude testimony in House Bill 6241. We next move to Chairwoman Ruggiero's bill, House Resolution 6252. I believe Chairwoman Ruggiero is available via WebEx.
Yes, Chairman Shanley, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's my first time before this committee. And thank you, members of the committee. H6252 that you see before you establishes a 15-member House Commission to study the effects and the procedures of the Coastal Resource Management Council. As you probably know, this is a politically appointed board that's making a lot of environmental and construction decisions regarding our 400 miles of coastline that will impact future generations. And I've talked to a lot of citizens who have some concerns, and I happen to have a lot of questions that I believe should be answered in a public forum. Transparency is a good thing in government, so this is an important conversation for us to have. I did speak with Leader Filippi, who is from Block Island, so he perhaps will be one of our members since we have 3 from both parties. He's also interested in someone from Block Island who has lived firsthand the CRMC decision, as you know, with Champlain Marina. But I have to say, I've received so many emails and phone calls on this bill for a study commission, probably more so than any other bill I put in over the years. So that tells me that the public really has an interest in hearing the questions and the answers. So that's the goal, really, just to gather information, ask questions. What are the CRMC regulations, for example, when it comes to aquaculture? What's the standard application process? And what should the state and the citizens be requiring from this board? So as you can see, the membership includes the saltwater anglers who are thrilled to be at the table, as well as the Audubon Society and a number of city and town zoning and planners. So look forward to a deep dive into the policy issues surrounding this and having some robust conversations. So thank you for listening and hearing the bill, and happy to answer any questions. But thank you very much, Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you. Any questions for Chairwoman Ruggiero from members of the committee? No questions. Thanks again. First witness have...
If I may, Shanley, or Chairman, I don't have a question. I just do want to state, while I haven't reached out to you personally, Rep. Ruggiero, I wholeheartedly support this, and it is long past time. The recent rulings have caused great concern throughout the state, and I think it's time for us to reconsider its structure, its organization, and the level of accountability that each of the members has. So thank you for taking
Absolutely, Rep. I actually tried to put it in 2019, but unfortunately, the study commission was not passed then. But certainly, there's no time like the present to have this kind of a conversation. So thank you for your support, and hopefully we'll be voting on this on the House floor in the near future. So thank you to all my colleagues. Thank you, Chairman.
Sure. The first witness we have signed up is Claire Costello. Good afternoon, Claire. We're here in the House Committee on State Government and Elections discussing House Bill 6252, and you are signed up in support. You have the floor to testify.
Thank you so much. Happy to be with you, and thank you so much, Senator, for bringing this to the floor. My name is Claire Costello. I'm a resident of Block Island, and I'm calling to speak in support of the establishment of the commission to take a closer look at the CRMC. As you all have probably learned from the news, we're kind of in the midst of it here, and I just find it to be a very sad irony that the ocean state does not have a board overseeing its coastal features with full integrity at this point. And I think that a government body that's charged with preserving the public trust over our natural resources ought to have the public trust to a greater extent than it currently does. And here on Block Island, given the coastal features, we are often reliant upon CRMC for a sense here, as many proposals that come forth do involve coastal resources. So I would encourage, again, the establishment of the commission to look at everything from term limits to qualifications to wider community representation, one that perhaps defers to staff that does in-field analysis and research rather than relying on other often improper considerations. So I think this is long overdue. I think it needs to be depoliticized, and I think credentials need to be increased on this very critical governing body. So thank you very much for the ability to offer some comments.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee for Ms. Costello? No questions. Thank you again. Next witness we have signed up is Topher Hamblet from Save the Bay. Good afternoon, Topher. We're here discussing House Resolution 6252, and you have the floor to testify. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Shanley, and good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm testifying on behalf of Save the Bay in strong support of H6252, the study commission on all things CRMC. And I do want to thank Representative Ruggiero for introducing this resolution and to her colleagues who are co-sponsors as well. Like Rep. Ruggiero, Save the Bay's interest in CRMC predates the recent controversies that have been in the news around the agency. CRMC is almost 50 years old. It is high time that we took a good hard look at the structure of this agency that was created in a very different time under very different circumstances. I do want to just point out that we have respect for the hardworking professional staff of the agency. It's only about 30 staff, and that's for an agency that is responsible for 420 miles of coastline. So the staff has earned a reputation nationally as an expert in coastal planning and other coastal management issues. So the other thing I do want to note is that under the leadership of Chairwoman Jen Cervenka, the agency has adopted some procedural reforms to instill more transparency and accountability in the decision-making at CRMC. But the chair and the staff are part of a structure that needs to be reconsidered. The two things I'd like to just call out are, one is the structure itself. It is a politically appointed body whose members are not required to have expertise in coastal matters, but it has sweeping authority to determine the fate of Rhode Island's coast. And as has been pointed out, there are no term limits. The other issue that we would like to raise specifically, and I know this will come up during study commission proceedings, is that the agency does not have its own dedicated in-house full-time legal counsel. Instead, it contracts with private law firms for services. But those firms can have other clients and other interests as well. And we think that CRMC needs a legal counsel solely focused on its mission, mandates, and also in supporting the staff. And I will say this is something that the Assembly could actually fix right now in the budget process. But that said, we welcome Rep. Ruggiero's resolution here, and we stand ready to support a good, thorough look at the agency's structure and how it can better serve the coast and serve the public and earn the public's trust as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hamblet from members of the committee? No questions. Thank you. That concludes testimony on House Resolution 6252 from Chairwoman Ruggiero. Next, we'll move to our own Representative McGaw's bill, House Bill 6253. Representative, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the committee for taking some time to listen to my introduction to this piece of legislation. This bill would require designated parking for electric vehicles and the installation of electric charging infrastructure and stations for those vehicles. The bill would initially be aimed towards new construction and major infrastructure improvements of parking locations where the parking location would be increased at 50% or more, with the goal of broadening that further down the road. I recognize that this bill will require some amendments, and I'm going to start off by saying that as we've have these conversations here and in the Senate, Senator Anderson and I are working through some of the language to amend the bill to better suit the needs of Rhode Islanders. I'm here today to listen to comments so that as we amend the bill, we take into consideration any suggestions that might come up through the discussion. Recently, President Biden introduced the American Jobs Plan, which includes a $15 billion investment to build a national network of 500,000 charging stations. Makes this bill that much more relevant. In addition, the National DOT also issued a report clarifying how some of its existing programs can be used for EV charging infrastructure. This could increase the use for EV charging infrastructure with an additional $41.9 billion in federal grant funding. The use of electric vehicles is where our transportation is headed. By working on this proactively to ensure adequate charging facilities, we can encourage the use of EVs now and have the infrastructure available for the anticipated use that we're going to have in coming years. We know that at least 10 automakers are promising to make only electric vehicle options in the coming years, with the earliest transitions as soon as 2025, just 4 years from now. GM announced that all of their vehicles will be electric by 2035. Volkswagen announced their date to be 2026, and Jaguar has set a goal of all electric by 2025. Other car companies setting timelines for the shift away from the combustion engines include Volvo, Mercedes, Audi, and Toyota. According to a Bloomberg report, the sale of EVs globally increased from 450,000 in 2015 to 1.7 million in 2020, and is expected to reach 54 million by 2040. This shift is why it's so important for us to be working towards ensuring that the infrastructure is there for all of us for tomorrow. We can be ready for this by coming up with a clear plan and taking advantage of the grants and funding that are being made available. By adding EV parking spots with charging capabilities, we're providing an opportunity for everyone to have access to charging, regardless of their living situation. We can remove a barrier for those who may not have a garage or other location where they can plug in at home. This lack of infrastructure is the number one concern I hear when I talk to people about electric vehicles. This bill will provide a greater level of comfort for those that may want to drive an electric vehicle, but are concerned about where and how they're going to charge it. We're seeing more EVs on the road every day, and that number is growing exponentially. We can make sure that we are ready for the change we know is coming. I want to address a couple of things. I did see that there was a couple of things that were submitted for testimony. So just, one of the things I want to talk about, I know funding people are talking about. There is certainly an expense to, this infrastructure, but I think it's important that we invest in it. And as I said, with the grants that are coming down the pike from the federal government, I think this is a great opportunity for us to be looking towards how we can increase that infrastructure in the coming years. The timing on this, I'll just say, like, the language on this is, we are definitely flexible on this. We understand that there are some things that we want to address, and that's why we're having this conversation. Some of the things that we're thinking we want to take about are the timing. So we know that there are some short timelines here, and we're flexible on that, and we want to take a look at that a little bit as well. We also recognize that there needs to be some clarification on the size of the parking lot. Initially, we were thinking that maybe it would be a percentage of parking spaces, but I think that we need to make sure that we're looking at amending that a little bit. So looking at the size of the parking lot and maybe how many, a set number of parking spaces possibly, or some other gauge to determine what would be most appropriate to get some infrastructure there. And then, let me see if I missed anything else. The other thing that we probably will need to clarify is the type of charging situation. So we want the infrastructure to be there. We need to make sure that the cables and the infrastructure is in the ground so that when we do install these, we are ready to go. But we recognize that there may be some changes needed to the language so that we can make sure that it's adaptable to the growing technologies that we have. So the other thing that came up in the written testimony, I just want to talk a little bit about the equity issue because that did come up in some of the written testimony. So this is something that's coming, right? We are seeing more EVs on the road every day. We know that these car companies are not going to be producing gas-powered vehicles in the future. It's coming. So it makes sense for us to have the infrastructure available. I know for myself, from an economic perspective, I know that, I know when I see an EV charging station, I drive an EV myself. When I see a business that has an EV charging station, I'm more apt to go there. If I'm looking for a place where I'm going to stop and grab a cup of coffee or something to eat, if I know they have an EV charging station, I'm more apt to go there because I know I'm going to be able to charge my vehicle, and that's where I'm going to be spending my dollars. So I just want, from a business perspective, I just want to keep that in mind as well. And then lastly, just remember that, we are a gateway between New York and Boston. And so if we can provide an opportunity for people to stop and charge their vehicles while they're driving, it will provide us with a little bit more traffic from that perspective as well. So with that, I will take questions. And again, I'm just open to comments.
Chairman Corvacey.
Representative, this is both for private and public garages?
Yes, it would be for private and public.
Do we have any idea what the cost would be per parking lot space to refit a parking garage?
So I couldn't tell you exactly. I can give you a sense, a charger, depending on the level, it would really make a difference as to the level of charging that's going to go in, what the voltage needs to be for that charging station.
It's going to be an added expense to the owner.
So what I'm saying is that there's several different types of grants available, through federal grants and also through the OER that are currently happening even right now. Starting in September, they're going to be reopening the grant process. But there are grants that are available to help with the cost of the electrical infrastructure that has to go in to support those charging stations, and then additional grants also available.
Yeah, I didn't ask about the grants. I wanted to know if there was an additional cost, which there will be.
Well, so
the owners of private garages, this will be another rule and regulation that they're going to have to abide by.
Yes, it would be.
Where did you come up with $10,000 for a civil penalty?
So, and again, we are flexible on that.
I certainly hope so.
This is
$10,000?
This is for this is just to have a discussion. But what we're looking for is to ensure that we have the adequate infrastructure across our state to support this. Right now, as I said, when I talk to people about electric vehicles, the biggest deterrent that people are concerned about is not having access to the infrastructure to charge. People who live in apartments are not able to pursue an electric vehicle because they don't have any place to charge it. And so what we're trying to do is find a way that we can make this technology, we can make the use of electric vehicles accessible to everyone, not just people who have a garage, at home in their with their single-family home.
I didn't think the ramifications of that last vote we took a couple of weeks ago were going to come so soon. I think this bill needs a lot of work. Thank you.
Any further questions for Representative McCaw? Representative Nardone.
Yeah, Rep. McGrath. My concerns were the same as Rep. Corvacey's, and I looked it up. I did a quick Google search, and it's going to cost about $2,500 a charging station. That's for a home one that you put at your home. And I also have a problem with private industry being mandated to do things that are going to cost them more money. I understand we're going to electric vehicles. I agree with you, Volkswagen. I've done a lot of research on it too, but if the free market has demand for those infrastructure, they'll satisfy that demand. I don't think we have to pass a mandate to put charging stations at these garages. No more than I think we should be putting gas pumping stations for the combustible vehicles. And the other thing I noticed is there's some pretty big fines in here if a vehicle parks in the charging station parking slot. And what I've noticed in this bill is it doesn't say that the vehicle has to be plugged in. So in other words, an electric vehicle can be taken up one of the charging ports, but doesn't have to be plugged in. So what is, I don't understand that. Like, if you actually want them to park there, shouldn't they be plugged in charging?
I appreciate you. Pointing that out.
Right.
I agree. Yes, it
Yeah.
should be. I mean, if you're going to
Right,
be
that should be
using
amended.
one of those parking spaces, that should be
Yeah, I think
set
that,
aside for people who are charging their vehicles.
I mean, if we're going to make the mistake of passing this bill, that should be an amendment in the bill. So, but I agree with Rep. Corvacey, and I agree with you with the charging. I understand we're going to be going to electric vehicles. I agree 100%, but to put another mandate on private industry, private businesses, I just think it's just a little absurd. So, but, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Representative McGaugh from members of the committee? Representative Agello.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm wondering, are there now, how many charging stations are there at state facilities, state parking lots and garages? Do you know? Are there any?
There are some within state facilities. There is, in fact, I have been charging my vehicle as we meet in session, and I know the Department of Administration has some electric vehicle charging stations, so I know that they are there. I couldn't tell you exactly how many there are.
Okay. There are charging stations here at the State House?
Yes, there are. Not on the State House property, but when we are meeting at the Veterans Auditorium, there are charging stations there, and I know that there are some at the Department of Administration as well.
Thank you. That's really good to hear. Thank you.
There are some at park and rides too that I've seen constructed lately. So they are appearing on state property.
Good.
Any further questions for Representative McGaugh from members of the committee?
Chairman Shanley?
Representative Tansey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Rep. McCaw. I am just wondering, is your intent to allow the businesses to partner with for-profit charging station like companies? Because I know that when we had an electric car, there were several different companies that offered those. So if we were to go to a mall, you would have an account with them, and you'd be able to charge your car there for a fee. And they typically had the premium infrastructure for the rapid charging. So to me, it was always an asset when I went to a shopping mall or to a parking lot that had that. So much like you said, it does become an asset to those of us who drive electric vehicles. And there are also opportunities to partner with National Grid. Like I know the ones that we have on our state property are in fact paid for by National Grid. That's part of an agreement that we had with them, and they have a responsibility to provide a certain number of those charging stations for people at no cost. So, I just want those who have doubts about imposing these things strictly, on private businesses for a cost, that there are plenty of opportunities for businesses to provide this service. And don't forget, it is a valuable service that's only going to become more and more valuable as time goes on. But, as she mentioned, it's the grants, it's the opportunity of the private companies that provide this service, as well as National Grid having a mandate to provide them. So just wanted to see if you had given those things any consideration.
Yes, thank you, Rep. Tansey. Thank you for bringing that up. And you bring up a good point that many of the charging stations that are out there are serviced by electric vehicle charging companies. There's a number of different companies out there, and while they help to maintain them, they help with the installation of them. It makes it easy for EV drivers to find them, but also it can potentially provide a revenue stream. I know that there are some of those EV charging stations where, some of them are free for EV chargers, but most of them are not. Most of them charge a fee for charging your vehicle. And so there is an opportunity for some of that investment to come back to either the whoever is making the initial investment in it, but there is an opportunity for some of those businesses to work with some of those EV charging companies as well. So I thank you for bringing that to the attention of the committee.
Absolutely. We have to start thinking about those things now because it'll be here before we know it. Thank you, Rep.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Representative McGaugh? First witness we have signed up is Jonathan Scher. Good afternoon, Jonathan. We're here discussing House Bill 6253, and you are signed up in opposition. You have the floor to testify. Welcome.
Thank you. Chairman Shanley, my name is John Scher. I'm the Executive Director of the New England Convenience Store and Energy Marketers Association. We represent the nearly 500 convenience stores and fueling stations and transportation fuel distributors across Rhode Island and New England. I'm speaking today in opposition to House Bill 6253. Specifically to the section which would require all retail businesses to designate one space or 1% of the total spaces for a level 2 electric vehicle charging station. That said, I do think that this bill needs an awful lot of work in general. Level 2 charging stations are not a one-size-fits-all solution. They are not appropriate for every location. Level 1 charging is generally used for home use. Level 2 charging is generally used for, is really most suitable for long-term parking, like a parking garage or an office park or a mall, something like that. And a level 3 charger, often known as a DC fast charger, they're really best for commercial locations, like many retail locations. They are the fastest, but they're also by far the most expensive, something in the vicinity of $50,000. A level 2 charger, which is what this bill would require, delivers just 18 to 28 miles of range per charging hour. So if a customer spent 10 minutes in a convenience store, for example, which I think everybody would agree would be an extremely long time to spend in a convenience store, a car would receive a maximum of 4 miles of range. We're just not the appropriate retail channel for a level 2 charger. And there are lots of retail businesses with similar customer visit profiles. In time, businesses will definitely invest in charging infrastructure, but the nature of the business will determine the type of charging station they purchase. Our channel of retail has invested in DC fast chargers, almost always, despite the small EV customer base and the likely poor financial return on investment that exists today, and who knows what that will look like going into the future. These are the only stations that make any sense for our retail members. If the state wishes to deploy taxpayer dollars, grant money, federal stimulus, or VW settlement money to install level 2 chargers across the state, then that's certainly its prerogative. But to ask all private retail businesses, regardless of the type of business they are or the type of customer they serve, is really an unfair financial and space burden. I just want to mention one other thing. Rep. Tansey earlier mentioned the National Grid. I think she was referring to what are called make-ready programs, which are taxpayer-funded programs. And once again, if the state wishes to use that money to bolster make-ready programs, then certainly there will be lots of businesses ready to invest in it. But what this bill would contemplate is a business using its own balance sheet to invest in those level 2 chargers, and it's frankly nothing that we can support. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Scher? No questions. Thank you for your testimony. Next witness we have is Brian Moran. Good afternoon, Brian. We're here discussing Representative McGaw's bill, House Bill 6253. You have the floor to testify.
Great. Thank you, Chairman Shanley, and members of the committee. My name is Brian Moran. I'm Director of Government Affairs for the New England Convenience Store and Energy Marketers Association. And my colleague John Scher just spoke. And what I wanted to offer is additional perspective that in terms of, this bill takes an approach that is let's build them and they will come, as opposed to an approach that is more supported by the facts, which would be to build them as they come. Specifically, this bill would require existing parking lots, not just new parking lots or ones that are being rebuilt or expanded. This is every existing parking lot, and we don't know how many those are out there, and the cost issue. And I did a little research myself and found that, a charger with a stand from one of the major providers out there for a level 2 charger is about $2,000. And probably to install it, you're probably looking at a similar cost. To break pavement, to install the 240 volt service for that charger. In terms of public acceptance for EV charging, according to the Mobility Innovation Workgroup report released in January 2021, Rhode Island has one of the lowest EV adoption rates in the country at 1.3%. Despite having invested over $20 million over the last 6 years, only 3,078 EVs are on the road today, including the state fleet. The state projects by 2025 they expect to have 43,000 EVs on the road. That represents a 14-fold increase, or adding 10,000 EVs every year for the next 4 years. We just don't see that as realistic or even happening given the low adoption rates. We know it's going to come. I'm not being a naysayer, but I think we're premature on this effort. In the Mobility Innovation Workgroup report, they also identify for those 43,000 EVs, they project they're going to need 1,636 level 2 chargers. And that cost alone, for the equipment alone, would be $3.2 million. For installation, you could probably double it to $6.4 million. That doesn't include maintenance cost, the software packages to make these smart chargers that tell the EV driver when it's available, whether it's even functioning. There's going to be maintenance costs, and who's going to pay for the electricity? That's a huge question. So in summary, just to kind of wrap up, I appreciate your time, is that we're really on the edge, and in terms of getting there, a lot of the car companies are, I acknowledge, are coming out with lots of new models. However, based on adoption rates and the lack of widespread public acceptance, I think we need to relook at this and focus. And maybe a good first place to start is to look at new and existing parking lots, new and rebuilt parking lots as a focus instead of trying to blanket everything all over the state. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Moran from members of the committee?
If I may just comment?
Sure, Representative McGaw.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments. I do appreciate your comments. And just to reiterate that what we are looking at initially is new and rebuilding parking lots, because we recognize this is coming down the road. This is something that we're going to have to be thinking about in the future. I do think that we will have more uptake of electric vehicles if the infrastructure is there. I think the lack of infrastructure is certainly a barrier to people participating. But I appreciate your comments, and yes, our focus is on the new construction or parking lots with significant upgrades being made, because we do believe that to install the infrastructure to provide the service that would be required would certainly be more cost effective to do with new construction, or as parking lots are being brought up, being dug up to replace. And so I think that's a great place for us to start to invest in that infrastructure while the ground is dug. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments for Mr. Moran? Thank you for your testimony. That will conclude testimony on House Bill 6253. The last bill on our calendar is from Representative Lima. It's House Bill 6240. It would allow motorized campers and trailers to qualify as antique motor vehicles and display antique plates. There are no witnesses signed up in favor or opposed to the bill. So that will conclude testimony on House Bill 6240 and our calendar for the afternoon. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Thank you for tuning in.